Hello, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10. Corporate social responsibility has many faces, but what do companies these days do to become responsible members of society? On today's After 10, we explore a UN initiative that gives businesses and organizations a clear roadmap. Stay with us. Well, Secretary General Im, thank you so much for joining us tonight on After 10.
Thank you for having me for this program.
And congratulations for being elected once again to lead the UN Global Compact Korea Network. And from what I understand, your organization uses 10 principles to really instill corporate social responsibility on a deep level in corporations and organizations. But in your words, what does your organization do?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your congratulations. I would also like to thank the members of my network for their trust they repose in me. My network's prime responsibility is to disseminate the UNGC 10 principles in the core areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption.
So you try to make corporations responsible members of society. Last year, what was the biggest achievement that you had that really showed that kind of work?
Actually, last year we achieved a lot of things, but let me mention the top three. The first one is the increased number of my networks, about 13% from the 230 to 260. And the second is we held a big global CSR conference of international scale. That was attended by about 600 people from the government, from the business sector, from the NGOs and the civil society organizations. And the third one is on the occasion of his visit to Korea, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, he met about 150 Korean CEOs. It was a very good opportunity for Korean CEOs to know what was happening at the United Nations as regards the CSR. And I am very pleased. During the last year, we did a lot, and we were recognized by the UNGC headquarters as of the top 10 local networks out of over 100 networks.
So what does it mean if you're part of this network? What are some of the responsibilities? What are some of the goals? What are some of the actions that you have to make?
Yes, we share the best practice among the member companies with regard to the UNGC 10 principles in the 4 areas. Through sharing, companies learn each other, mutually. They learn mutually.
So that
is the first one. And the second one is also we discussed about the big ideas, how to effectively disseminate the UNGC values and principles. Of course, we help the companies to prepare and submit their annual report. This report is very important.
What goes in that annual report?
We call it, many people call it the sustainability report, but UNGC calls it COP, Communication on Progress. Through this report, actually companies disclose what they did during the 1 year in relation to the UNGC 10 principles, but also through the process, they started to review themselves. I mean, to self-reflect on what flaws and what points to be improved in the future. So this report, one way is a communication to the investors, but the other way is the self-reflection process.
So you really create a framework for a company to organize themselves,
Yes.
to follow humane principles and business
Yes.
practices for not only the stakeholders, their investors, the environment, and also their consumers. So why would a company be drawn to that process in the first place?
First, let me say this. This UNGC actually guides business to internalize the UNGC 10 principles and values. For what? For sustainable development of a mid-long term. And business, if they perform the ethical management and the CSR in their management, they will get the social recognition as a good company, as an admired company. This is beneficial for them.
So corporate social responsibility, that term is relatively new, but it has been around for a while, but it looks different in each company, in each cultural organization. How would you define corporate social responsibility and ethical management?
You are right. Some people regard the CSR as a charity or philanthropy. And some people say the CSR is a synonym with charity or philanthropy. But charity or philanthropy is only a small part of the broader CSR. CSR is, according to our views, is to create, for the business to create sustainable values. As you mentioned, to various stakeholders. For example, investors, laborers, consumers, and the environment and the community where they operate. Of course, the business should return good returns to investors. Of course, business should provide good working conditions and education to laborers. And to consumers, the business should produce products of high quality and the environment to reduce CO2.
Do you think that when companies follow the UN principles, it does create a win-win scenario?
I am sure. If they do the ethical management and CSR, they're adhering to the UNGC values and principles, I'm sure they will get the good public approval or trust. This is very important. The social recognition from the society is essential for their survival and for their success. If they lose public approval or trust, then there will be a very high penalty for their intangible assets, including brand and image. I understand that trust is an essential part of capitalism.
So in your opinion, is the world in great need of your services? Are there really that many businesses that are acting poorly?
I wouldn't say acting poorly because the UNGC values and principles are not widely spread, widely disseminated, not widely disseminated.
So you're saying it's because of ignorance?
Yes, ignorance. That is the reason why we work very hard. First, to disseminate UNGC principles.
But doesn't the company know when if they're polluting or if they're treating their workers badly? Don't they know that that's bad, that what they're doing?
Sometimes they may know, but sometimes they may not know because they don't know what is the standards, international standards or international the principles. So it is my duty to let them know what the United Nations Global Compact actually recommends, actually encourages. Right. We have 261 members. It's very small, tiny portion. It's a sliver of total number of Korean companies.
So these are the top performing companies, or?
Yes, of course. Many of them, most of them are members of my network. But we need the critical mass to spread the principles. So we need a quantum leap. My ambition is to increase the members of Korea Network to 400 by the end of 2015.
And a lot of the members you want to attract also come from the small and medium-sized enterprises?
Good question. No, very small number of the companies, SME companies are members. So my effort, my investment next year will be with the SME, because SMEs are backbone of our economy. They account for 99% of the total number of Korean companies.
Is it because it's harder for them to have the access in order to comply with some of these more stringent standards?
Of course, first we provide the forum for them to share best experiences from other companies. There is a mutual learning. Mutual learning is one of the assets of my network can provide. Second is they will have a network with other companies, big companies, small companies, globally and locally and globally.
So what are some of the small steps or even easy steps that you advise companies to take when they first start?
It's true, the human rights or anti-corruption subject may be a little bit sensitive. Of course, environmental issue will be the most easiest subject for them to approach. However, if companies knows that the advantages of their observing the UNGC 10 principles, they will realize the benefits, because their support, their adhering to these principles will give them good social recognition. As I come back to that matter again, the reputation capital will be accumulated for them.
Do businesses really believe in reputation capital translating into profits?
Oh yes, I think so, because business is not learning. Business is not a 100-meter sprint. Rather, it is 42.195 kilometer marathon. Therefore, if a business really desire to exist, desire to survive and to succeed, yes, they should approach sustainably approach. I mean, they should have of a middle long term. Short-term approach all the time cause some crisis for them. Therefore, my network recommends and advises the business to take a sustainable view, middle long-term view, because particularly in this matter, I want to quote the founder of the Siemens in Germany. He said, "I will not sell the future for short-term profit." I mean, yes, that is a very appropriate reflection of what actually business should do in their management. I mean, that they should take a sustainable approach.
So the Siemens case, is that the standard or the norm, or is that the exception? From I think the public's perspective, many companies do sell the future for their short-term quarterly profits. It's true. Business tend to focus upon the seeking short-term profit. It's very difficult to expect any change from their approaches. But still, short-term approach is will if meets with any crisis. How do you convince executives who may not be at the company for the long term? Will or commitment of the top management is essential, indispensable for CSR, for continue to CSR. Without the firm belief of the top management that this CSR will be beneficial, will be good for the company, for the society, for the nation, then this CSR issue will be isolated from the main activities.
of companies. Therefore, we want to convince the top management of these new trends. But the UNGC is a voluntary initiative. We don't impose or we don't enforce any agreements or principles upon others. Only we approach with dialogue, with policy commitment, with a recommendation to persuade them to observe the UNGC 10 principles. Of course, it takes time. So that is the reason why we hold seminars and workshops and conferences. It's my regular work. And we invite potential members. We invite some potential candidates for our members.
How can the government get involved in your work and instilling these principles into corporations and organizations here in Korea?
Mm-hmm. Government has a role to play. Government should facilitate the CSR activities of the private sector. Government can support. Government can regulate the CSR activities. Sometimes the CSR activities is out of principles and values. Government can enforce relevant laws and regulations regarding the CSR. And also government can demonstrate the best practices of CSR. That is the government's role. And also government has its own state-owned companies. And the government has public procurement companies. I couldn't say any examples, but I am invited to make speeches to many government-related associations.
So how does Korea compare when you take CSR in Korea and compare it to CSR globally?
I think that Korea is one of the top 20 local networks out of over 100 local networks. We have, in terms of numbers of members. So at this moment, the Korean companies, even though we have some corporations regard the charity or philanthropy as a CSR, but in general, Korean companies very actively participate in the work and activities of my network. They are also very interactive. When we holding seminars and workshops, that means they are very much interested in sharing their best practice.
Overall, how is the global CSR movement going?
According to my observation, the strengthening of CSR is gaining momentum. There are a couple of examples. The first one is India enacted CSR as a law. According to the reliable sources, India enacted this law this April, and this law requests a company with a net worth of $90 million, they should spend at least 2% of their profit on CSR. They are very strong on this point because India's the 25% of population are living in absolute poverty. The second one is the EU Parliament. EU Parliament, they approved a bill which requests the big companies with more than 500 employees, they should disclose their policies, their risks, their results as regards to environment, society, and governance. This is this tried to enhance the transparency in ESG matters. And the third one is anti-corruption movement. It's the rapidly spreading. The OECD Convention on the Anti-Corruption, OECD Convention on Bribery of Foreign Public Officials in International Transactions, rather long name. And also United Nations in 2003, they adopted their own convention. The recent case is the British Bribery Act of 2010. This is a very strictest and most advanced regime in combating bribery. The British Bribery Act has a couple of points too worth mentioning. The first one is usually the bribery, the anti-corruption laws and regulations, they penalize, they criminalize only the bribe givers. But the British Bribery Act, the criminalizes also the bribe receiving, and also the penalize the commercial bribes. We call it the bribery in the private sector, and does not allow any facilitation payment. Small facilitation payment was, it was a practice among companies before British Bribery Act. Even OECD convention does not. The convention says it does not constitute the offense in the Bribery Act, Bribery Convention. But the British Bribery Act, no tolerance for any facilitation payments, large or small. And also this Bribery Act places personal liability on senior management of the corporations. This is new and increases the imprisonment term from 7 to 10 years.
And lastly, what impact and what real meaning would you like to impart on the viewers in terms of the importance of corporate social responsibility?
To conclude, I want to say to us three things. The first one is the UNGC is a voluntary the sustainability initiative. It incorporates of all ideals of ethics, anti-corruption, human rights, gender equality, and so on. If we look into these UNGC values and principles, they put the people at the core of business management, not at the periphery. This is a very important message. We put the people first. And the second is now, as I introduced the international trends of on CSR, CSR is now not a choice. It is an obligation. The greatest CSR tsunami is yet to come. This is the message I want to say.
Well, we certainly look forward to this movement continuing to build momentum and for more companies to adopt more ethical management. Thank you so much for sharing these principles with us and joining us tonight on After 10.
Well, thank you very much. I will do my best, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
And that does it tonight for us on After 10. Join us again next time. We'll see you soon.
We will continue to do our best to improve our show based on the perspective of our viewers. Always feel free to leave us any comments, great ideas, or suggestions you wish to share with us.